curious relationship that we've sustained with the EU. Well, join me now, as David was saying, my two guests, kind enough to be with us at 2:30, Nina Schick from Open Europe and Peter Wilding from British Influence, which is a pro-membership campaign. Peter, you've got your work cut out for you tonight.
Well, I mean, it may be 2:30 in the morning, but I think this is very important, significant news for Britain, actually. Quite a lot of your commentators would say tonight, well, this is obviously a disaster for Britain. UKIP have topped the polls, the Cameron idea of renegotiation is under deep threat, and I would say no. Actually, this is a huge wake-up call to in Europe. They realize the situation. Now, what is the situation they're going to get a grip of? The big buzzword around Europe is change, and nobody is going to be able to ignore a real clear message coming out of Europe for change right now. And the question is what to do about it. Now, the problem with the political establishment of this country is they've been too frightened to make a very positive new case for European membership. The fact is, the British media and the political establishment have let the British public down, and by doing so, they've let Nigel Farage in. And let me explain what I mean by that, because it's quite important.
Our fault.
No, not at all. It's the political establishment's fault. And this is the reason why. Now, Britain has got such an opportunity to change Europe. This is a letter signed by Cameron and 18 other prime ministers only a year and a bit ago saying we want to change Europe, we want to make it more democratic, we want to focus on jobs. Now, these are the things that these political leaders have to do something about.
But nobody's saying anything different at the moment. I mean, Open Europe is not saying anything different to that, is it, Neil?
Not at all.
That's where everyone is now.
Yes, that's where everyone is. It's very much about reforming the EU. And if today's results show anything, it shows that that is exactly what needs to happen. I mean, we've seen the anti-EU vote. This has been the big story of the night. Not only in France with Front National, but even in Germany, we have the rise of a party that's anti-Euro that didn't exist a year ago, and they've won 7% of the vote. We even have a German NPD politician, a neo-Nazi, going into the European Parliament.
Why doesn't that tell you that the project is over then? In its current form, at least, it is over, isn't it?
It needs to be reformed.
And the project is ever developing. I mean, the fact is you've seen a high watermark over the last 20 years of what you would call a federalist agenda, which was earmarked as the euro and the constitution. Those two projects have clearly suffered a hell of a lot. And the curious thing is, the winners in this game over the whole 40-year period of developing the European Union is Britain. The two great successes of Europe are the single market and the enlargement to the countries of the East and the South.
The other thing
that is huge.
I want to talk about turnout, because when you talk in these passionate ways, it sounds as if everyone's been dashing for the polls to have their say. We haven't. We know that turnout is abysmal still, isn't it?
Yes, turnout is a big problem with the European parliamentary elections. Ever since the first election in '79, it's been on a steady decline. We had 63% in the first election, now we're on 43%, and this year it's likely to be around the same. So it's absolutely a massive problem. And the other thing I'd like to say actually is about this anti-EU bloc coming into the European Parliament. What it actually does is squeeze out the reformist middle. So actually, even though we want to see the EU reform, the fact is that with the MEPs coming into the European Parliament, that might be more difficult to achieve.
Isn't the truth that when everyone is talking about reform and change, the party that just says very bluntly, don't want to hear about reform or change, just want out, is going to be the one that people listen to? That seems to be the story in the UK. In England, at least tonight,
and elsewhere.
And Wales,
Yeah, it's populism, and it's very successful, and that is a wake-up call to politicians to say, you say that, this is the wrong solution. We don't disagree with your patriotism, we simply believe you've got the wrong solution. Now, the problem with the politicians, they've done it in such an understated way. They haven't wanted to frighten the horses. They're frightened of what Fleet Street would think. That option is no longer in existence. David Cameron and Nick Clegg and Ed Miliband have now got to put their heads above the parapet and say, British people, this is why we're in it, and we have to win it. And here are our friends who can enable us to do that.
And we saw George Osborne make that fairly fundamental shift, that speech with you at Open Europe about, what was it, 4 or 5 months ago. What do you think those party leaders have to do now?
Well, they have to push the reform agenda. They have to make
But
alliances.
they're doing that already, aren't they?
Yes, but
Not very vocally.
hopefully this election result will be a wake-up call for people like Angela Merkel to realize that some of these ideas that are coming out, these ideas for reform, is actually what Europe really needs. Otherwise, we're going to turn even more to the right.
And if you are just a pro-EU party, like the Greens, like the Lib Dems, what do you do?
Well, I mean, I just
Resounding
don't...
silence.
No. It's not about pro-EU as if that's the be-all and end-all. We've moved on, and I think the politicians need to move on, because Nigel Farage has moved on.
Okay.
He's the guy who's saying, look, guys, we've got a new vote for us. The problem with the British political establishment, it hasn't done that for a long, long time. It has to do it. And it's not as if Miliband, Clegg, or Cameron don't believe that they can actually achieve what they want. The big problem, and this is exemplifying the whole thing, is that Cameron says he wants a new settlement. Nobody knows what fills that new settlement. Do the repatriators fill it, or do the reformers fill it? And that is the next question.
Nina, thank you both very much indeed for coming in.